Puppets! Hi, I'm the Hoarding Puffin. I like puppets. I really like puppets. Big Muppet enjoyer, if not evidenced by my everything. I want to make one. I want to make another puppet. I have made a puppet based on Boober Fraggle before. And for my first ever puppet, it turned out really good, so I do want to revisit that in the future. But that's not what we're doing today. What we're doing today is we are making tortellini. If you don't know what that means, I'll explain it. So tortellini is a little pseudo-dragon from this D&D podcast called Cantripped. He belongs to a character called Kieran, who is played by the lovely Artful Renegade. And Tortellini is a delight, even though he has a habit of munching on artifacts and stealing buttons, but he can do no wrong. No wrong he can do. Why did I turn into Yoda? Anyways, we love Tortellini in this household, and for a while now I wanted to make a hand dragon puppet. The sitting dragon puppets, you make a glove or have a glove, and then you make a fake index finger or middle finger depending on where your mobility is, and then the actual finger is inside the little dragon and you can move it around, and the dragon moves his head and looks like he's sitting on your hand, kind of like a handler glove. I made one of those ages ago out of leather, which is leather and hot glue, the maybe two worst supplies to make a tiny pliable dragon. But it was my first ever puppet I made myself, I feel like, so it counts, it's fine. So I really want to revisit that. I want to make a glove that actually looks like Funky, and I want to make the little tortellini. Obviously, step one was to just make a glove. I made the cuff out of some leftover cotton fabric and then the hand part out of a jersey. And I cut a little hole just at the knuckle for the index finger. And then I stuffed the finger portion with some scraps from the same fabric. You can also just use any sort of stuffing material. The important part is that you make a solid finger, and that sounds so weird. And you can also put a little bit of cardboard or wire in there. That's what I did to give it a slightly curved shape. And boom, you have a little finger. And I sewed that to the finger next to it, so it doesn't just wobble around there. And then I sculpted the base for the dragon's head out of some aluminium foil and glued on some wire as the base for the horns. And then I made the simplest neck and body and everything out of some white jersey. And then the tail and also the little legs were made out of more aluminium foil. This does need to be fancy. I literally just stuffed that little roll of fabric and sewed and glued it to the back of the glove. Glued on a lot of details like the little horns, which I literally just made out of EVA foam scraps. And then, like I said, the legs were also made with aluminium foil and, again, just hot glued to the wrist. This is not fancy. This is your base. It doesn't have to be fancy yet. I also apologize for the poor camera work. I rushed this project a little bit before Elfia and apparently didn't pay attention to the focus. Then you're going to grab either an air dry clay or a foam clay. I use these little foam clay packets that I had lying around, and it's clay. It's not that difficult. You knead it until it is as soft as you need it. Haha. And then you start taking your little pieces, stretching them out, and covering over all of the parts of the dragon's body that need sculpting. So for me, that was the tail, the legs, and the face. I sculpted the horns, and this is why I had the wire in there, to give them some stability. And then for the details, I actually used the head of a sewing pin. Here you can see I put some pearls in there for eyeballs, which I later painted. If you have black glass beads, you can avoid that step. I just didn't. And yeah, like I said, I used the back of a pin for sculpting, which is a trick I used way back when I made custom Funko Pops, and I find that it really works. And you just put in whatever pattern you want. I put just a lot of little indents for a scaly pattern and some grooves into the horns to make them look like they're sort of twisting together. Right now he looks a little bit weird because he's almost entirely white and then he has the ears standing out. So we're going to be painting him with just a shit ton of acrylic paint. Tortellini is a sort of pinkish color, so I mixed a custom sort of mauvey pink base color and just covered everything. And yes, I was wearing the puppet whilst doing this, and yes, that is uncomfortable. And once your base color is dried, you just add a bunch of dimension and details with lighter shades and darker shades. Really take your time with this, even if you're rushing this project, which ideally you shouldn't be doing in the first place. But these little dots, especially if you're making a dragon that's supposed to have scales, they really make the scale pattern look realistic. And you really want to have as many different, barely different shades. So right now this shade is only very barely darker than my base shade, but it's covering up a lot of the lighter dots I placed first, and that creates a sort of dimensionality. Is that a word? I think it's a word. You can also use a sponge. I use that specifically for adding some color shift, especially on the horns, because I wanted the grooves inside to be pink, but I also wanted that light purple color in there. And for that sort of stuff, you can really use little sponges. I find that those give you a lot of detail. And our very last step is just gluing on some feathers for his signature fluffs, and then you're done.